this was one of the best months that I've had so far. We're officially kind of at the halfway point, and there's just a couple different things to really discuss in the breakdown of the report. Really impressed with just the generosity of the community and being able to see a lot of the different partnerships that we have in place and building upon those to put our kids first. It's important to remember that everything that we do is rooted in students first and putting outcomes in place that impact our students in the most positive way. One of those opportunities that came up was with Berea College. Their generosity is amazing, and that partnership continues to get better and stronger, specifically with some of the things that our Frisk does through our outreach piece. The 55 community students that were able to have presents underneath the tree because of their gift wrapping party. When I walked into the college, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, and it was Santa's workshop. It was really cool to see all of their employees sacrifice their time and some of their own money to be able to make sure that some of our families have presents underneath the tree. So that was a very rewarding experience for me to go in and really kind of boots on the ground approach of making sure that I'm practicing what I preach. I'm putting kids first, I'm putting community first, building those relationships, and making sure that I'm leading by example. Lots of participation in the different community events that we have had with our fall festival and our parent-teacher conferences and open house. Principals have done a great job with all of those types of things. A very rewarding opportunity for us to see community action in effect with the Madison County Emergency Management Department hosted a roundtable preparation exercise for emergency preparedness. And so myself and Mr. French went and participated with first responders from across the county for how the school would be impacted and what their role would be if we were to be hit by a tornado, and where we would set up for different responses and care sites, and what our role would be in organizing with the first responders if we were to go through some sort of emergency like that. So it was a very good piece to show what that collaboration looks like under multiple different levels. Last week, I sat down with the elementary staff and I just opened the door and invited them to come in to share with me any feedback on the job that I've done so far, but also what they need from me and what they've seen, and just an open forum for them to be able to just kind of talk through what more they need or what they'd like to see and what direction they'd like to go. I had some really good feedback, really good, open, honest dialogue for some things they'd like to see, and I'm going to work with the school administration and district office to figure out the best course of action for some of those feedback opportunities. And then one of the big things that they did request was that they had another chance later on. So we're going to turn this into probably a monthly opportunity for them to just come in and speak freely about what they're seeing from the classroom. Because as I've mentioned time and time again, is I want to lead in the way that I wanted to be led and never forget what it was like to be a teacher in the classroom. So it's important that I have those lines of dialogue available with my teachers. So one of the things that I want to end with the transition into the financial report is just reminding, and obviously this is a live stream piece and talking just to the people that are in the auditorium here, is that from the superintendent seats, if I led by making decisions that were going to be popular and going to be easy, I wouldn't be a very effective superintendent. So a lot of times I'm going to have to make decisions that I'm going to have to stand by and have the courage to take the arrows and sit with the decision, because it's what's best for kids and it's what's best for the financial stewardship that I'm in charge of. So I asked Nathan to put together some more concrete figures for what the impact of the change in the school resource officer contract looks like, and we're going to transition into that, and he's going to lead with it in his financial report and then elaborate a little bit further with some of the numbers.
All right, Nathan, are you ready?
I am.
Excellent.
AJ.
Yes.
Let me move a little closer. And Nate, can you?
Oh, swing that around a little bit to see? Yes.
Sorry. It's usually out that way. Is that better?
Oh, much better.
Actually, I want to thank Jackie for that one. I appreciate that now that I look at it.
Okay, and so I actually have my presentation, I have the financial reports and then the SRO piece, but I can do it in either order you all give me okay. I can make it happen, so just don't look. We'll later.
Keep it for a surprise. Don't kill the suspense, right?
Okay, and so like Dr. Hughes mentioned, I'm just going to go through details on contract comparison cost, just those types of things that I've had a hand in. And I've familiarized myself with the current contract as well as what's proposed and the contract that came before, the one that we're in right now. So I'll just kind of try to give you all some background, just some numbers, that sort of thing. So this is a breakdown of what we have paid the city for our SRO contract back to 2019. And it looks very much the same as this all the way back to 2006. So that was the earliest contract I found, was 2006. It started at a flat rate, $35,000. And then over the years, it slightly increased, I think, just cost of living and those types of things, but I don't think we did a whole nother formal contract, not that I could find. So you'll see in 2019, we were paying $45,560.90, and we stayed right around that $45,000 through fiscal year 2022, so that's the 21-22 school year. So in April of 2022, the contract was renegotiated and completely rewritten to include some additional costs that I'll go through those. But you'll see in 2023, the overall cost of that contract went up to $112,585.26. 2024, it was $114,769.32. 2025, $106,550.59. And the reason for that drop is around this time last year when we started having all these conversations, overtime was cut out of this. So that is the difference in the overtime cost. So right now we've had 1 quarter of billing for this year at $26,285.40, and I expect that to be, if I project the year, because those are pretty consistent, be $105,000 this year. So the 2022 contract, and I've got some excerpts, but the main thing that was added here is that we started paying the CERS contributions, and 100%, that's retirement. And just stop me if I throw any lingo in here.
For sure.
So we started paying the county employee retirement system, and Berea is a hazardous duty. We're designated hazardous duty, so that's a 38.6% contribution for retirement. And we're also covering all other fringe benefits, and we're paying for the full year. We're paying for 12 months of this contract for the entire position. So what the proposed contract, after we met with the city and with the police department, they proposed that one way we could save money on this is to go with a retired police officer. Under the Public Pension Authority rules, if you are retired and return to work, you don't have an employer contribution. You actually don't pay into the retirement system at all. So that shaves that 38.61, I think it is, percent right off the top. And it also, the second big change to this is that it would return it to a seasonal employee. So that would be 9 months rather than 12. And of course, that lowers what we would be paying as well. And I've got some comparisons there as far as what the two contracts would look like next to each other. But so that's the biggest change really, is the CRS pension contribution of 38.61 being removed, moving the position to seasonal. Now there is an addition to the new contract, and that is that we would be paying in year 1, $8,469.02 for equipment to get the officer outfitted, and vehicle and uniform would be $8,571.43. So it's an additional $17,040.45 in year 1, but then that equipment fee goes away, and annually we would pay $8,571.43 to cover uniform refreshes and the city vehicle. Things that do remain the same though are the training requirements for certification remain the same. They would still have to be a sworn school resource officer. All of the same training requirements that are set, those are all statutory. So all of the training requirements, those types of things stay the same. And under both contracts, the resource officer remains an employee of the Berea City Police Department, and not of us directly. So I know there have also been some questions around the fund for this. So we get $20,000 from KDE that is part of, it's funding that was passed in 2024. And so there was 18 million this year allocated to this. Each school district can get up to $20,000 per campus that has a full-time resource officer on it. So since we're all in one building, we count as one campus with one resource officer. So we get the $20,000 from that. And then Safe Schools funding is the other piece. That's part of the 2020 budget bill. So right now, and that's an allocation straight from the Department of Education. Typically those are based on enrollment, things like that. So this year's allocation was $33,822. So those are both Fund 2 projects. You know, if you combine the two, that gives us $53,822 in state revenue for this school year. That can cover our resource officer and any other safety initiatives. Right now, we have budgeted 100% of that to our SRO contract with the city. So this year, I'm estimating that we will go over what's allocated to us by $51,319.60. And so the proposed contract revision moving to seasonal without retirement benefits would reduce the overage in year 1 to $15,418. And then when that initial equipment cost drops off in year 2, we would be around $8,485. And so here, I've just broken out, this is from actual invoices we had for last year. And so that's about a half year of overtime, because we did cut that around this time last year. And just in the interest of a fair comparison, I also included that same number of overtime hours under the revised contract, just to show exactly what it would look like if we did the same, if we had the exact same year, just trying to make it a fair comparison. So the difference there is $37,310.14. And if overtime is completely out of this conversation, the difference would be $33,815.55 for the first year. And then moving into the second year, I averaged a $500 pay scale increase. That was, my understanding, was pretty typical. That kind of gives us a buffer, and they do a 2 to 4% cost of living adjustment. So with those things considered, and that same amount of overtime, the difference would be $44,243.16, and with overtime out of the conversation, $40,748.57 less in year 2 than our current contract. I believe that is what I have on this section, and I'll go back to financial reports, but if there's anything I can answer on this piece, I can pause and take questions, or I can move back to the financial reports.
I think that's clarified. So, yeah, clarify the financial reports, which is always probably the thing that's top of mind for most people.
So how did we get off the railroad track here?
So, best I can tell, the contract just hadn't been renegotiated in a long time, and I know, we had new administration, relatively new administration, so did the city. I think it was probably just nobody had looked at it in a long time. And then when everyone came to the table, I think what was proposed was signed, and I don't know that there was a whole lot of negotiation that happened. But I wasn't part of that conversation. But best I can tell, that was just a major contract revision in about April of 2022 that just really almost, I mean, not quite tripled, but almost tripled the cost of the contract. And you know, knowing some of the history on it, I know there were many years that we had, well, when Ray Brandenburg was our resource officer, he would have been in that retired category. So when he retired again and left, I know we had a couple of active duty officers come and go over the next couple of years. And so I'm guessing, and this is just my guess, but that significantly increased the cost on the city side of things. And just nobody had really looked at it. And I know we've been through a lot of that. Things that just nobody just kind of keep going with the same thing. And then when you do look at it, you realize that now we're spending a lot of money. And so I can empathize on that, certainly.
But we'll continue to look at it real hard now.
Yeah,
That would be
we're
a
still
big thing.
doing that work. That's a,
I think I should go. Oh, go ahead. In your, in your financial network, what are some of the districts doing that don't have money? That money doesn't even get them, SRO?
I think it varies wildly. I know some districts are kind of still doing they still have arrangements a lot like what we used to have, where it was just kind of a flat rate, and a lot of those are counties where probably the fiscal court has came in and said, hey, we're comfortable with this amount of reimbursement, and likely they're, some of the cost is on them. I know we're in kind of a unique situation because we do have multiple school districts in the same city limits. So I think it varies a lot depending on where and kind of what that relationship's like. But I do know, we're in the minority as far as having two school districts within the same city limits. Like, it's just us and a handful of other independents that might be in that same situation.
Thank you.
I had one question. I heard you say, safety-wise, we know that they would have the same qualifications, so that safety piece we've got. But anecdotally, either from Berea history or sort of folks you've talked to, it sounds like we also have reason to imagine that we might hire a retired police officer who could potentially stay here in this position for years if it was ultimately decided to be a good fit. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, and so the city makes the hire,
Right.
and more or less as long as they're pleased with the hire, they meet all the training requirements, evaluations are good. I think there's a clause in the contract where if we are unhappy, and we can, I think there's a process by which we could go and say, hey, these are the reasons we're not happy, we would like to move on to somebody else, or, we just don't know that this is the right fit. But otherwise, that is the hope, is to, have the same person for many years.
Financial reports, sounds great.
Okay. So, for November, we brought in a whole lot of revenue into general fund. $2,542,799.53, and so that's huge compared to our normal months, and that is our tax revenue. We always get a large portion of it all at once in the beginning because a lot of people's taxes are escrowed into their mortgages, and they get that discount for paying it. So certainly all the mortgage companies and a lot of individuals, they make the payment early. So that is a majority of our tax revenue that's come in. That's kind of the biggest news as far as revenue goes. You know, we got our regular Fund 2 grant reimbursement, a little over $250,000. And that's just our federal grants coming in. School activity, you know, we have a lot of, we've got a lot of athletic events and things, seasons in full swing, that sort of thing, banquets. So a lot of activity related to that. And then I'll touch on food service in just a second. So if we break down the revenue for this month, so $1,952,215 of that was our general property tax. Biggest check I've ever held.
You can take lots of pictures.
Yep. Even the reaction at the bank was like,
Nice numbers.
get my boss. So, yeah, that was, yeah, you know, it felt interesting driving up to the bank, you know, $2,000 truck with a $2 million check. But, you know, it was an experience. Motor vehicle tax, that rolls in pretty regularly because, you know, that's based on birth month. So 15,000 there. Utility tax is fairly regular too. Occasionally there'll be a little bit of lag and we might get kind of 2 months that fall into one, but pretty typical, 61,000 and some change. Small amount of interest just off our checking account. We got our regular SEEK payment, and then just some smaller items like Medicaid reimbursement, summer EBT reimbursement that we filed for in the middle of summer for work that Mr. French did. So that's them paying us back for his time doing some reports over the summer. And then just some miscellaneous items that don't really categorize well, but I wanted to grand total everything. So the important thing to know here is year to date, our total revenue has been $4 million, and this is just general fund, but has been $4,007,082.40. This month it was over 2.5 million, so that's 63% of what we've brought in all year in 1 month. So I did want to be very clear that this is great news, but again, this is something we totally expected, and we don't expect it next month. Still very much in a tight situation. Even though, you know, this is the first month for a while, I can say general fund's temporarily out of the deficit. But we do expect it to dip back down as we move through the year. So if we look at expenditures, general fund, we had 701,000. Building fund, 619. That was a large bond payment that we had, and that is very typical too of November. The way that the fiscal agents work out those repayment schedules on bonds, they tend to put those really large payments right at the tax time because just the timing of the whole thing. So that is there anticipating that you'll have a large balance because of tax revenue. And I will move on. The rest of this is pretty just kind of business as usual. Nothing to really highlight. If we break down what expenses came out of general fund for November, salary and benefits was $588,428.93 of that total, and then non-personnel, like everything else, bills, you know, our large electric bill, all those things totaled $113,419.99. So we are still, you know, majority of our money goes towards salary and benefits. If you look at kind of our top categories of expenses, and the way I looked at it, I just pulled out anything that was over 10,000 because after this it was all 4,000 here and 3,000 there. So just kind of the big categories. We did have 29,295.33 in tax collection fees. So I wanted to mention that because it looks odd on our reports. You know, it shows up like, wait, why are we paying the sheriff's department? And it's kind of an accounting thing on their side. they charge us like a 1.5% commission or collection rate, and that's relatively low. A lot of school districts that do partner with their like local police department or sheriff's department pay maybe a whole percent more than that. So we've got a pretty good deal there. And that is a majority. I expect for the year as a whole for us to pay about $33,000 in tax collection fees. And having talked to other people, you know, $33,000 certainly isn't enough to fund a position, and kind of the amount of work that would take to collect, but also collection rates go down significantly, places that do collect their own. So interest, we had $20,822.92, and that is an interest payment on our solar. So where it was a general fund bond to begin with, there is a general fund payment every year. And so this time it was an interest payment for $20,822. And our electric bill, and this is kind of before it's been so cold, that was $13,000, so that might be a little bit higher, especially moving into January. And we had $12,708.91 in other professional services. And that can mean a lot of different things, but in this case, it was mostly our contracted therapy services for PT, OT, those types of things. And that's kind of the other side of that Medicaid revenue that we got. So if you look at food service, they brought in $70,011.77. They also spent $64,917.48, so a little bit less. Still in pretty good shape there. I don't love their book balance right now, but it's not a historic low or anything like that. Just still, I think I've mentioned a few times over the last year, something I kind of got my eye on in case there is any problem. I head that off before it really kind of presents itself. So general fund expenditures year over year were $152,158.14 less than November of 2024. Our revenue was $114,673.47 more than November of last year. And then looking at the same thing for food service, their revenue's up about $400. Their expenses were down $10,541, but it's likely they just had a refrigerator or something tear up this time last year. I don't think that's like a trend or anything like that. I think it was just a large one-time expense this time last year. But their fund balance is down $92,000 from last year. Now, I think we've talked before about how they're only allowed to have a certain balance anyway. So we ended the year, they would have only been allowed to have $60,000 in their account more than what they had, or they would have forced them to spend it. So, you know, you look at kind of like what they spend in a month, what they bring in a month, and what's in the bank, and it seems very tight, but part of that is by design. If they were sitting with $300,000, they'd be calling us right now, demanding a plan for how we were going to get rid of the money. So year to date, general fund revenue is $4,730,000. Expense year to date is $3,166,270.16. And so if you compare year to date, year over year, we're up for the year in revenue $108,809.59, and our expenses are down $541,648.42. So we've year to date 14.6% less in general fund expenses realized. So our kind of net positive between the two is $650,458.01. And that's what I've got for tonight. Questions or?
How long will be this green?
So,
Hard question.
you know, we will probably kind of stay in the black for the next couple months, maybe 3. We'll definitely, by the time we get to the end of the year, we'll be seeing deficit numbers certainly back on general fund. But, you know, we're moving in the right direction. I think those deficit numbers come this June will be less than last June. That's, you know, I think we all kind of knew, you know, took us a while to get here, and certainly getting just everything back to normal within a year wasn't within our grasp. But I feel good about where we're headed and where we are. I think we've made some good progress, and you know, I've started working on next year's budget. Because that'll be next month. We'll start talking about the draft budget, and you know, really kind of digging in line by line of where we're at. I think we've been able to stay within kind of the bounds of what we were hoping so far this year. It all looks, you know, I've kind of looked at every category, and there are a few things where we've been a little bit over, you know, like maybe we had more bus maintenance than we thought we would, or, you know, just small items like that. But then there's other areas that are the opposite. So overall right now, I think we're on track. I felt good about what I've seen. Kind of taking a deep dive back into the budget stuff, and just with what we've been seeing every day.
Thank you.
I think I'll do a follow-up, I think, to Jackie's question. What it sounds to me like when you say we're on track, right, that we are getting rid of the deficit that we started this year with of approximately $1.3 million, right? I know as part of the next round of budgeting, we'll have to figure out what we think our starting budget point is going to be for the following year. It would be, I think, useful for everyone to see sort of a month-by-month projection where we think we'll be as we move forward, just so we can sort of put that almost on a wall for public accountability about where we're headed over the spring semester, and why we believe that we'll end up, fingers crossed, in that sort of, at least at 0 position going into the following year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we may not want you to give up your spring vacation on the beach to do that.
I'm not big on sand and sharks.
I'll go on your vacation. You stay working.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
All right. And we can move on to attendance and enrollment. Oh, sorry.
So what the superintendent wanted to say about 6 days of
We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it in the elementary report, some of the things they're doing.
Great.
I kind of want to add something there. We just actually got some communication from KDE, the school safety folks, about the SRO program. They're going to ask the General Assembly for an extra $2 million because there are 401 districts that don't have an SRO in our state. So, you know, the law says you have to have one, but they didn't. It's an unfunded mandate, so they can't find them. So, you know, we've got.
But 400?
401, yes.
Schools or districts?
Schools. Yeah. So looking at our attendance, Dr. Nees had asked me to kind of put this in a chart to show how we have progressed with our attendance rates over the school year. You can see we had a pretty big drop between months 3 and 2 and 4. And this is school months, so like it's a little different. Like, you know, the school month is based on 20 instructional days. So the first month usually ends early part of September, but once you start putting breaks in there, it kind of shifts. But for each 20 days of instruction, this is our attendance rate. The only thing that I can really think of between months 3 and 4 is we had a pretty major illness epidemic that happened right around that time. And then you can see during month 5, which would be actually finished up just here the 5th of December, we had a bigger increase. So we're looking at trying to keep it up around 93%, still hovering right around there. And as we move forward, you know, depending on weather and things like that, we'll hopefully get back where we need to be.
And just as you're doing this, I think for some of us, it is very difficult to see what the numbers on the chart look like. So that beginning number is between what, 90?
It's 89% up to 95%. So the lowest we got was the high school in month 4 was between 89 and 90%. I really don't like to see any school get below 90%. So if I'd kept it 0 to 100, you would have had like straight lines. So this kind of offsets it to show major losses and increases. And when we look at percentages of attendance, a 1% increase or decrease has a pretty big effect on seat funding. And then if you'll go to the enrollment data, Dr. Neves also asked me to show the numbers between last year at this month, for each month, and to compare it to this year. One thing that I really noticed was that we went from 912 students at the end of last year with everything that had happened. Of course, you see here, month 6, we go from 932 all the way down to 912, and there's a pretty obvious reason for that 20-person loss. But we went from 912 down to 893 over the summer, so we lost roughly 20 kids over the summer, which is actually a lot less than I thought we would lose. But you can definitely see the change for each month here. If you make the view like, I don't know, 125%, Daniel, it might be easier to see these numbers.
Let me see here.
Maybe 220.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now we can
Scroll
read.
slowly.
And then, of course, I'll send this all to you folks, and next board meeting, I'll put together a better chart and share it with you all. But there's a pretty big, significant difference in our enrollment, to the tune of, if you figure $4,000 per student, we're losing about $80,000, and maybe about $160,000 between our high point last year to this year with our enrollment figures.
And so in the current month comparison, what do we look like now at month 5?
So last year we were at 925, and this year we're at 893. So
Consistent, it looks like, this year.
yeah, we're not moving too much between. I think our highest was 896, and our lowest was 891. So we're staying within a pretty. But that's of course a net drop, or we lose some here and gain some there. That's the biggest thing I can say about that.
So what's the mystery behind last year and this year in terms of?
I'm sorry.
In terms of the, where those students have gone, were they part of a big class that graduated, or we had some out-migration from the
Actually,
community?
our big class is still here, right? It's the senior class is our big class. We're gonna lose a lot when they graduate. Most of those kids are going to the county or to model. We had a few who are going to homeschool, but not as significant as we've had in the past. I do a lot to try to discourage homeschool if I can. Once they realize I ask them for grades and attendance figures, they realize maybe we should just go to school.
Do we get any feedback from those kids that are transferring from here to?
Not too often, but the folks that I've talked to just anecdotally, they said that there's too much turmoil for them to continue where we're being here. And I'm optimistic with Ms. Caldwell's, the high school being in the blue. I think we could get some back that way. Because I've said ever since I've been in this position that if we can do really well instructionally and in our athletic program, we'll make people want to come back. And I really believe that our high school going into blue the way it has is going to bring some of those high school kids back. Daniel, if you don't mind to scroll down a little bit, I'll show month 5 for the high school. If you see just one more there, Daniel. Yep. Last year they were at 309, and they're down to 286 this year. And you can see our biggest drop is in the high school. So if I were to look at this again next year, I would expect to have a bigger increase just based on our instructional piece.
Are we getting any feedback as to why these kids are leaving?
Well, like I said, that not too often do I get a lot of feedback from people leaving. If I know them personally, I'll reach out to them and ask them, what's going on, why are you leaving? And most of the time it's because there was a lot of turmoil last year, starting around this time, that really made people want to leave. And that continued for the next 3 or 4 months. So you figure since December of last year, we've lost about 40 kids. And pre-COVID, we've lost even more. So enrollment's going to be big for us. And I really believe that as our instructional piece gets going, that people are going to want to come back to Berea based on how good our school is. Because you can do all kinds of gimmicks to get people to come, but if the schools, they don't consider it to be good enough, they're not going to come.
So good to see that we kept that consistency in the elementary and the middle school areas. We didn't lose as many folks there. I know high school is always more of a challenge for those sorts of things, but I'm thankful that you held on to those kids too.
Yeah, our elementary, once they start the program that we are in right now, I think as they move in, that's one of the special things about Berea is you move into these extra other schools and you're still with the same folks that you've been with your whole life. I experienced that in my school when I grew up, and it was a big deal.
Well, if we build off of Jay and your point about the positive things that are going on in the elementary, could there be some way to enhance that, replicate that in a middle school, high school version?
I think that another aspect of this year that is completely different from any time that I've been here, even including not even working in this district, but just having my kids here, is our public outreach is much more extensive than ever before. We're putting our story out there more often than, showing up on the news for every bad thing that happens. And I think that's going to be big. It's going to take time to see the fruits of that, but it's huge, in my opinion. Anyway.
That reminds me, I picked up the Jackson County newspaper, I think maybe last week, and on the front page, they had a picture of one of their staff members who was recognized for being a good employee and a positive influence on the school, and one of the staff teachers, certified teachers. So it was one of both employees highlighted on the front page of Jackson County newspaper. So then I look at the Berea Citizen. I really do buy the Berea Citizen for more than just the yard sales. And we didn't have any of that. I'm going, oh, shucks.
I kind of agree with her. It's a Berea paper, right? We're not a county paper, it's a Berea paper.
Yeah, I don't think that it would be a horrible thing to put something in the paper. I just don't know that many people consume the newspaper like they used to. I remember my dad always had the newspaper and he'd fold it just right and read mostly the sports section, but you know, the other stuff too. I don't know that people do a lot of that anymore. So that's why I really like to see Luke's putting that stuff out there on social media where people get most of their news now. But anytime we can recognize our wonderful staff would be great.
And then people would buy it just because they recognize somebody and say, oh, and then they'll send it to them. I thought you might want an extra copy of this.
Does happen. Thanks, Kyle.
All right.
Appreciate it. And I believe we have something from the Frisk this evening as well.
Yes,
Hello?
right. So every other year, we write our grant plan. So part of that grant plan is just the assurance certification. So it's something that is talked about at the board meeting, a little bit unique for an independent school because like in Madison County, there's a representative for all Frisks and that gets this signed. So the grant plan will be written over Christmas break, and in January we have different meetings where we meet with our state boss, and she helps us to write that plan. And then on my advisory council, which Sarah sits on, they look over the plan and approve it. And then I will sit down with Dr. Neves and he will look over the plan and make sure that it fits our school. And then it kicks back to the state and they do the final approval. So that will happen and is due by March 1st. But this is the part that the board does, which is just saying that you're gonna follow what the state recommends as far as budget, munis, infinite campus, all those types of things, spacing so that we have adequate space. So it's just something they make us do every other year, but you all are welcome to ask any questions. And I let Dr. Neves know that we will include the state approved plan in the March board meeting. Trying to be short and sweet. It's been long already.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Me and Nathan are long-winded.
All right, thank you very much. And we can move on to school reports then.
I'll keep this really brief because I think that Mr. Moulton with academics, KSA is coming up in a minute. So we'll be speaking on that as well. Since I last saw you guys, we had our fall festival, which was really awesome. We raised over $2,000. Been working a lot with PTO. This Thursday night, they're having a free parent event in the cafeteria, and it's called Candy Cane Creation, where parents and families, and there's a schedule per grade level, families can come into the cafeteria and make ornaments, and have the Grinch is going to be on hand, hot chocolate, different things. So it's just kind of a family event. Trying to intertwine more with the PTO this year and get them more involved with their school activities. I don't think that they had been in the past very much. They've kind of been very independent. I've been trying to get a hold, make them more of our actual day-to-day functioning and activities if they choose to do so. We're also recruiting parents in our PTO. We've sent many briefings out to them, so I'm just kind of highlighting that. Where I think that parents and families sometimes don't understand that it's open all the time when they have their monthly meetings, which we send out. So please come out and support. We're always looking for good volunteers or anybody that wants to help our community school. Let's see, Thursday we'll have our celebration this week where we will go over iReady growth for all students. They'll be recognized for that and do some KSA testing rewards for last year's testing. And then Friday we have Santa on campus. We'll be an hour and a half on the elementary side and an hour and a half on the middle school, high school side visiting students. And you'd be shocked, even the old kids really light up whenever they see jolly old St. Nick coming around the circle. So, a lot going on in a short amount of time.
You mentioned volunteers. A few months ago, several people were very interested in finding out more how to become a volunteer, and there was talk about having that coordinated in a way that it was relatively easy for people to find out, get whatever training they needed. So is that something that you're
Yeah, it's-
helping the PTO to do?
Yeah, well, they're just trying to recruit more parents to be involved in the PTO, which normally transpires into volunteering in the school. We've had a pretty good handful of people that have been coming and volunteering. We had some that just kind of want to come do lunch duty. Also got Dr. Need's approval to start back with Watchdogs, which is a program that we had many years ago that Bill Smallwood helped ran whenever he was helping and supporting the elementary, where fathers come in per day and just kind of like have a presence with helping out teachers, doing more school supervision, and just kind of being present. So that program, we're looking to hopefully get off the ground back in August.
Great idea, thank you.
Good evening. So I would like to begin with a few recognitions for this month. This month's staff recognition is Miss Danielle Lilly. If you know her, she works with our FMD students, and she rarely gets recognized. She's in the back. She has a very complex schedule every single day. She was unable to come today, but just wanted to recognize her for all of the hard work that she is doing. She received her undergraduate degree in learning and behavioral disorders and elementary education, also her from EKU, and her master's in moderate to severe disabilities and teacher leadership from Georgetown College. This is also her 20th year coaching Special Olympics. She is always willing to do anything that we ask her to do. And again, I just wanted to highlight her as our teacher for this month. Also, I am proud to say that Berea Community Middle School brought home the grand championship for the 6th grade showcase, which was recent at Ferristown, and I got to be a part of that. It was pretty amazing that Saturday. Our students really showed what they were made of. Also, a couple more volunteer recognitions are Warren Mills. If you know Warren, he is always working the PA for high school basketball, and also Tab Brewer, our clock keeper, Gage McLeese, and Travis Harris, holding the books and stats. So anytime they're at a ball game, they're always willing and always helping our teams. Just a couple of highlights I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to sit down. We recently did have our winter band and choir concert and art exhibit. It was a really, really nice event for our community and for all of our students. And then also, for the first time, our juniors took the SAT online prep. It was a really good day. We had a mock SAT setting for them down in the Singleton gym. And they will be taking the SAT in March, so we wanted to give them that opportunity and give them that experience. So that was a very positive day for them. We also have our award celebration for middle and high school that's coming up on Thursday. We have our club day on Friday. And if you like basketball, we will be having our Berea Invitational Basketball Tournament over holiday, and the Berea Holiday Classic. So that'll be boys and girls basketball, so it'll be very busy here in the school over holidays. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Get ready to be pumped up, because we've got some good information to share with you. Chasing me. So, just let me say, we've talked about some deficiencies, enrollment, and those kinds of things. And let me and my colleagues, the two principals, share with you why we believe that's going to turn around and improve. We have done some very good things.
Oh.
Okay, so we have done some very good things, and I'm going to speak to you from the 64,000 foot level to district level, which will encompass, however, the things that the schools will do. But let me first say this. we have, this past testing season, we made some tremendous gains. We had some slippage, but where we did slide back, it wasn't much. And we had a lot of other pockets where we showed some good achievement. So we have so much potential out there right now that we can make some great strides in even improving where we're at. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. With that potential chaos that we had about testing time last year, we've got to give props to the teachers and to the students, because they were professional and they stayed right with our plan in terms of the testing. So we have one or two here maybe, but if we could just give them a round of applause, I just think that would be great. They done a professional job. So for this particular slide, let me just orient you to it, and then you'll see some of the same things when the principals talk about their specific schools. The key core work processes at the top, across the top, that's basically, if you want to look at it like, that's our systems. That are the things that we do in education to make sure that we continue to teach and teach properly and good for the students, to help them grow. And so there's 3 up there, it looks like, that I've pulled out for the district standpoint, and I'm not reading to you, you can see those, I hope. But those are the things that will encompass not only what elementary is doing, but the middle school and high school as well. And when you see their slides, you may see even additional things that they've pulled out when they analyze their data. So from the elementary, middle, and high school, you'll see areas from the data that I pulled out to show where we need some work. So elementary, writing and math, middle, math, science, and writing, and then high school, science. Would like to say for elementary, science is not up there because they actually did very well. If I'm remembering my data, I think they only had 6% novice in science, so that's very, very good. So we need to now look at those areas that we've highlighted and determine what we need to do from an academic standpoint to pull it all together. Really, everything up there is academics. Our multi-tiered system of support is going to be a mechanism that we use to help lead and guide all these different things that we need to do. So if we look at specifically where I say academic, we need to really, for those areas, we really need to define a tier 1 expectation and adopt a clear K-12 framework for math. Okay, you can see that's going to be in everyone's. Even though it's not listed in the high school, Mrs. Caldwell is probably going to bring that up at some point. So, but they made some great strides in math this past year. So there are some non-negotiables there. When we say tier 1, that means everyone in this room is in a tier 1 level. We all are going to get the same things going on in class. We're going to be taught the same ways, but at some point maybe someone may need some additional support. So that's where the tier 2 comes in, and then tier 3, depending on the needs of the student. So that's what I'm talking about, a clear expectation needs to be defined. Our MTSS group is actually refocusing what we already had in the district to make it more effective. Quite frankly, we need to make sure these things that we're talking about here is defined and is moving through our schools like it should. There's got to be consistency in everything that we do. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of a difference between what we may do in elementary school versus middle and high school, but there is a balance and consistency of a system that we need to make sure we push through. Science comes up big time. So we want to make sure, and this is one of the things that I'll do from the Director of Academic standpoint, is to convene a district team so that we can look at aligning what we do in our science programs. We need to look at our vertical alignment to make sure that we're teaching standards the way they should in each grade span, and then also make sure that we're not missing or adding to things that are not matching to the standards. We can't do any of this good stuff unless we also provide teachers with professional development and how to do these things that we would be asking, specifically in science. And so we do have some plans going forward. We have some money set aside for each school to do some of this professional development. So let's talk about MTSS just a little bit deeper. So again, I've already stated that our focus is going to be on that mechanism of supports to help drive through any change that we need to support the schools. We're also making a big push with our access team for the social and emotional needs of not only our students, but also our staff, to give them support where needed. So bottom line, these 3 or 4 bullet points, we want to create some entry and exit criteria that's very defined and specific on how students matriculate through each one of these tier levels and how they go back from a tier 3 back to a tier 1. That's very, very important because we don't anticipate, again, if we're all in the tier level 1, that's where we all want to be. And so if we can determine what those processes should be and look like, how we give those additional supports, that's where we need to be and how we should move our supports into each one of the schools and make it consistent.
Could you remind us what MTSS?
It's multi-tiered system of supports. And that's where the tiers 1, 2, and 3 comes. And so we want to make sure, this is something that I know we do, but we want to make sure that we do it in such a way where it's very defined and clear. Whenever we have students that transition from elementary to middle, and then from middle to high school, they have certain supports that they have been used to. And so we want to make sure that we define those, and that they, if they still need those supports, that they are carried through with them. And I don't know any other way to say this, but we don't want that to get lost in the shuffle, okay? So, and then finally, we want to make sure that we offer that professional development for all teachers at all levels on how to scaffold and differentiate lessons. Scaffolding, I like to call it chunking, basically putting small bits and pieces together and then build upon that curriculum and certain skills until they become proficient with it. And then differentiation, everybody learns at a different level. Everybody learns differently. So we have to, I think we need to continue to do training in terms of how we are to establish lesson plans for those of us who do need some additional supports, because we learn a little bit differently. And we do a pretty good job with that, I'll have to say. But that's just something that we need to see in a very descriptive way in our processes. So that's it from a district level. Any questions on that before I pass it over to elementary?
I'm really pleased to see the professional development aspect because for the teachers and then the other staff who are the next tier, it just makes it a nice involvement for everyone and the behavior supports, so thank you.
I would say Ms. Witt is really to thank for that as well, because she has been doing some outstanding work with the Access team and developing some of that support network.
This
this is what I gave teachers.
You're good.
And SBDM, and I thought it was useful. Let's break down of all your scores from previous years and the current year for elementary. But I want to bring something to your attention. That is, if you look at the graph on the back, because on paper you have that the elementary dropped. But I think it's very important, and our SBDN members, especially our parents, saw this graph, and it made much more sense to them, that you had such a tremendous leap the previous year that you did not get what the state would call gap growth points, okay? So with that being reduced, you didn't go down much in anything. Actually, the only thing you went down in was writing and maybe a point in math in the elementary. So I think that's really important to see that graph and to see the progress over the last 3 years in the elementary school, and it should be something to be proud of. And that's what I really harped on with the elementary teachers, because when you go from green back to yellow with just a few points that you miss staying in green, that color shift in the scoring system, it's just a downer. It's almost like the state sets you up for, if you make huge chunks of growth, then you set your next year up for failure. So I think that it's just important to clarify that with everybody, and that graph really shows that very well. So if you were in green last year and the prior year, and you look at your current year, why are you not still in green? You just had a little bit of drop, you know, so so that's important. You want to go to the next? Okay. So, oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah. So our objectives, we in SBDN last week, you have your school, your continuous school improvement plan, which is the CSIP, and the district does a CDIP. We really focused on these objectives. We'd had previous CSIPs in elementary school had astronomical goals that I didn't feel like were maintainable. So if you see in objective 1, increase the number of special education students scoring at or above proficiency in reading from 26 to 29% by the end of 25-26 school year, as measured by the state academic assessment, 10% growth. Our SBDM, instead of saying you're going to jump from 26% to 40%, we wanted to make things attainable. So we looked at 10% growth in all of our goals. Now, when you look at that in a 3-year plan like you're supposed to when you look at the CSIP, and some of the goals are written in 3-year goals, 10%, 10%, 10%, that's 30% growth in 3 years span. So we want it to be obtainable. I think you saw all of these, but these are the main goals on our CSIP. I'm not going to read them all to you, but we focused obviously on our GAP students, which is special education students, or students with special education needs, reading, math, social studies, and writing. And we did not write a goal for science, because science we were in green. Miss Barker, I'll do a shout out, she does 4th grade science. She went to a lot of professional development in the previous couple of years that's really paid off, and she's done a tremendous job in our science department, as all of our teachers are in all their areas, and have been for the last couple of years. You want to hit the next slide. Just activities on the CSIP, it calls it activities, I don't know why. But you're looking at iReady curriculum, iReady toolbox that they can pull from. These are teachers I'm speaking on. He mentioned MTSS. Tier 2 and Tier 3 are that more driven intervention for groups or individually for Tier 3. We do a really good job at that. And a shout out to Mrs. Doherty. She leads a lot of our MTSS intervention groups. We're doing that in a regular education classroom this year with our groups, and it's working really well as she goes in and tags team with the regular education teacher. I'm excited to see how that will work out. See that word down in the bottom on the left, math, deliberate formative assessment. I'm huge on formative assessment, and I've talked to our teachers about the first semester was evaluation for me. The first semester was building up climate and culture. Second semester is about deliberate formative assessment. Formative assessment is what you do in a daily classroom on how you check your learning. It's kind of like a learning check. Now, what the deliberate piece of formative assessment is what does your teachers do with it? So you can do that and check where they are, or do they understand this standard or whatever, but what are you doing with it? So that's gonna be the conversation. Do you reteach? Do you really need to focus? Have you missed something? As a class as a whole, need to be retaught this lesson? So deliberate and intentional will be huge in our second semester in elementary. Those two words. You could wrap it up with deliberate and intentional instruction. I'm not gonna read all that to you, but.
Wait, maybe just go back slowly over that section, because my eyes.
Which one you want?
My bifocals didn't find a spot where you were focusing on deliberate and the other.
Deliberate formative assessment, analyzing /
Yeah.
reteaching. And that would be, and you know, summative assessments, formative assessments, I should have, well, look over here. I said formative assessments, intentional usage, so intentional and deliberate.
Same word, same
Yeah.
meaning, but
Yeah,
different
right.
words.
But those are the two that we really will be harping on in elementary. I feel the transition has been good this year. I'm building relationships with our teachers. We just got to kind of hit it hard in the second semester, and we want to see growth going up. And I think as long as you're going up, and that was one thing I focused on in the middle school, and I think Kelly will share that. We might not have had huge strides in the middle school, but it has been continuous every year, and I think that's very important. So that's what we hope to do in the elementary. Any questions? It's a lot in a small amount of time, I'm sorry.
You know, if you could maybe do just a paragraph, 2 or 3 short sentences about this that could be put in a letter to the Berea Citizen editor.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for the lay people to.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I think the keys would be on the focusing on, I think that an explanation of what formative assessment is and how that's utilized from a teaching perspective goes a long ways, and I think a lot of our parents don't understand that, but that's a huge driving point in our curriculum and instruction. There might be something we do little snapshots of language or something off our website or off social media or something in the future. But that's a huge piece of our teaching in the school. What do you do with that, and how can you be intentional with each kid's space of learning?
Something parents could be supportive.
Yep.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
And a little bit is my still understanding what climate and culture measures in the KSA. Understanding that you're stepping in this year as the elementary principal, I guess I'm wondering, what does it mean that there was almost a 4-point drop in climate and culture? I see it's still in the 70s. I don't see that as remarkable. But is there more information that you get to speak to, also what might lead to climate and culture?
Well, it's funny how they gauge that, right? The kids take a survey.
Right, that's okay. That's
And
fine.
so, one of the things we will be doing is, and I know that Ms. Coyle had done this in the past, but it's very important to be deliberate with that, because you can teach, not teach the survey, but you can go over those questions and make sure students understand those before they take that. That's a big part of it, and explaining what the questions are, because some of them are wordy and they don't really, like, it's kind of almost backwards. So we just want to make sure it's very clear with our students. It's all about them wanting to be here and loving their school and wanting to be here. And then I think that the conversations we have is, this is a good opportunity for you to show that and to make sure that you let people know that you love this school and you love your teachers and this community that we have. And it shows. No, I'll shoot for 90 on that. That's not, I don't like to lose. We good?
I will make this very simple and very quick. Very proud of both schools. Both schools did show gains. This is just an overall of the middle school accountability. As you can see, our reading and math for middle school is 46% of that 100% accountability. Science, social studies, and writing, 45%, and then the quality of school climate, which is what Mr. Pointer was referring to, that survey is 4% of our overall accountability. Now, I think there are 3 or 4 more points that we're missing there, but you have to have a population of 30 students in order for it to count into your accountability. Generally, that's with our ELL students. So I think we have about 25 or 26 ELL students preschool through 12th grade, so they do not fit into a category, and those points just go throughout the 100% accountability. So, and last year, our middle school, they were yellow in several areas. If you notice, although we are a yellow school at 61.5 indicator overall, they actually came up 1 to 2 points in many areas. If you look here at the reading and math, they're in the green at 62.7, that is the overall indicator. And then science, social studies, and writing, another green at 59.3, and then the quality of school climate at 73.4 in the green. So those were all small improvements, which is what we want in schools. We do have a couple of areas that we want to work toward, as with the high school, and we will look at those as well. We do want to focus on intervention, Tier 1 instruction, overall quality, high quality instruction for all students, with a high focus on our students that hold IEPs, and also looking at all areas, as Mr. Moulton had mentioned, like with our reading, math, science, social studies, and writing. So just really we have an overall focus of ensuring standards-based instruction, providing high-quality intervention for all of our students, and making sure they're in the proper tiers and they graduate in and out of those tiers as they get those interventions. One thing that I focused on last year was mastery of skills in the current level and also in the prerequisite level. So it's really hard to take an 8th grade student and go back and try to teach them 3rd grade skills. The time is of essence, because you only have the one school year. So we heavily focused on that. Current mastery of skills, mastery of current skills, and mastery of prerequisite skills. So that's what we're continuing to focus on, and just really proud of the middle school of what they have done. So they are making small strides each year, and that's what we want to see. So that's where we are with accountability for middle. We do want to focus on we want to focus on increasing that overall indicator score of overall special ed students. And again, that is just looking at those interventions. One thing that we have discussed this year, instead of just providing intervention based on their iReady scores, we're also looking at their previous KSA scores. Some of those students were right on the cusp between either novice and apprentice or apprentice to proficient. So we want to really highlight those students, provide that intervention, and it works. It will get them to that next level. So we want to focus on those students, the reading and math, also science, social studies, and writing, because those were our lower scores. But again, that is overall across the, in the building. Those interventions have to really be in place for our special ed students. Also, continuing focus overall for our reading, math, social studies, and writing through our tiered intervention, and just really focusing on those standards-based teachings. Now, in order to ensure that that is implemented with fidelity, we will be continuing to work with all of our faculty and staff to make sure that they have very healthy unit plans, that they have pacing guides, that they, when we walk in the classrooms, we know where they are and what they're teaching, and the students know the why behind it. They know what those learning intentions are. That is very, very important for students to know the why and to understand. And if they don't master a skill, then what do? We go back and reteach them so that they do fully understand that standard and they're mastering that standard. Okay, so our middle school action plan, it just goes across the board. This is what I implemented last year, and it worked. Just a high focus on that Tier 1 high quality instruction, holding all of us accountable, including myself. Deconstructing the standards, building those healthy assessments. For example, if you have 2 teachers that teach the exact same subject, then making sure that they're giving the exact same exams to the students and that they're learning that same content area and not different content areas. Also utilizing both our iReady and KSA data to implement the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. We have some excellent interventionists in the building, and they're doing a great job. Also implementing those targeted interventions based on what I had discussed earlier, mastery of current prerequisite skills, and then incorporate
KSA-based items on their summative exams. They have to practice it in that format in order for them to get it. So that's our focus. We did get the bonus points. We got the bonus points. Pretty excited for this. It's been a lot of hard work. So this is my 3rd year as high school principal. First year I was out of the building about 35 days for NISL and trainings and what have you, so it was a little difficult to really make that instructional impact. So important that we keep that focus as instructional leadership. So I can say that really we've worked hard about 2 years. We've gone from the orange to being in the blue. Every single teacher in the building has worked very hard on it. And you can see what our applied change was in the numbers in the bold. That's where we are now. 86.2 for reading and math. Our current juniors absolutely knocked it out of the park last year on the reading and math. I cannot believe how well they did. And actually really excited for them to take the SAT this year, because they were so focused on the practice SAT this week. Just so proud of them. Science, social studies, and writing, that's your current seniors, last year's juniors that took science, social studies, and writing. So we did have a little bit of a drop. That's a really high group with some different, just a varied group there, very large group. So we did drop a few points. That's going to be one of our focuses and goals. Quality of school climate came up even another point. So that tells us that our students are happy. They feel good in the school, they feel safe, and they feel like they're learning. So that went up also. Here's where your bonus points come in. So the first year I was here as head principal, we were at 50% college and career readiness post-secondary. We went up last year to 82.5, and then we got those bonus points, which gave us the applied change of 29.6. So very, very proud of this, very proud of middle school and all of the great changes that they've made as well, and we're going to continue going forward. So our goals for high school, I do want to say this on an open platform. We have not had a science curriculum purchased since about, I think our science department said about 2001. We really need a science curriculum. In order for us to keep up with the educational trends and keep up with, the state testing with KSA, we need a science curriculum. So I'm going to ask for that in some format, in some way, if we can get that. Also, we're going to focus on the social studies, science, and writing. Our science has historically been low. Science is very difficult in high school, but again, we really need the materials and the resources in order to teach our students. We do have new resources in math and reading, but we need those science resources. Any questions?
It's amazing that.
Action plan is some of the same. We'll continue with the metric from the state. I have really tried to be a rule follower with instructional leadership and follow what KDE has said that we should do in order for our schools to be successful. And so we do weekly PLCs. It's not always the popular thing. It's not always the fun thing, but actually it's kind of become fun. So it actually has. So we're doing weekly PLCs, Tier 1 instruction, and of course our Tier 2 and 3 interventions. That's the one-on-one and small group for our students that really need that extra push.
Remind us what PLC is.
Professional learning community. That is deemed by the Kentucky Department of Education. They highly recommend that all public schools do weekly or bi-weekly PLCs. That's where teachers come together in their departments and they focus only on standards-based teaching, assessment, and instruction. So they just keep looking at that data, analyzing it, retweaking their teaching, and when they come together like that, they can kind of bounce ideas off of each other. But it's been really good for high school, and we've implemented it in middle school, and I think it's going to work really well also.
Did the state include a little joy of learning in that process of PLCs?
Always.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other questions at all?
You all have been busy, busy, thank you.
The only other thing to add was in the conjunction with the elementary report was just the update on, we talked about earlier in the year coming into the school is that our kindergarten classes had kind of blown up in size. It's a very volatile enrollment trend that comes with kindergarten. It's hard to project what those numbers are going to look like, and you really can't finalize it in your staffing until the school year begins. We have one plan in place where we're going to, and this is a site-based decision as far as what they do with their allocations and how that looks at the elementary level. Ultimately, what it boiled down to is there are 3 students over enrollment in one class, 2 in one, 1 in one. And so that site-based approval process has gone through, and the elementary principal is working to provide additional supports from a behavior and academic standpoint to our kindergarten teachers so that they have the support they need to be able to manage those classes effectively.
Okay, could you back up and slow down to 25 miles an hour? Thank you.
Yeah, essentially there are statutory requirements for class sizes, and if you are ever going to go over class sizes, site-based has the authority to do that as long as they are providing equitable supports to make sure that the classroom environment is still sustainable and the teachers have the necessary behavioral support and academic supports to meet the needs of the learners that are in their classrooms, which Mr. Pointer has done a great job with that. Ms. Witt has done a great job with that. It is well in line with all of our interventions and supports. What we would love as a district is to have an unlimited amount of money to be able to have 10 kids in every class, but that's not in reality. And so given the current circumstance of where we're at in a financial element, kindergarten is one of the most expensive positions because it also is required to come with an aide. And so 3 students over the maximum requirement is not a justification to hire an additional teacher. And so that's where we're at with that. Mr. Pointer is going to continue to provide supports and be present in the classrooms and manage that in the best way that he is able to.
I do live in the kindergarten class, just so you know.
Could you say that again?
I said I live in the kindergarten classes, so
You do.
I've got some friends.
Okay, thank you. So what are some ways we will know that his living there is paying off?
That is something that they discuss at their site-based meetings, and we will just continue to keep an update on those reports as he presents them each month.
Sounds good. We want to know when we'll need to send in some reinforcements. Might need some new friends. Thank you.
And I believe we are now at audience comments for the evening. It's a select group, so I'm going to move on pretty quick. Let's go on to adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a few items, consent items this evening. The minutes from the November 17th meeting, which I hope everyone has had a chance to review. Our regular financial reports, which were provided to the board earlier. A little bit more extensive here, we have our regular meeting schedule. The plan is, of course, to keep it at 7 o'clock on Monday nights as much as is possible. There's one flex on that in January 15th of next year, so this is the upcoming meeting schedule. Otherwise, it looks like we are pretty consistent with our regular pattern. And then we also have a memorandum of understanding for a new computer science pathways with We Lead CS, an exciting opportunity for us to add in computer programming, cybersecurity, data science, network administration, and network security for very little cost. It's $500 for a $500 fee for a year-long course for students with $250 fee for a 3-hour semester-long dual credit course. And there's actually, I think, some chance to get some recoup on that with some timeline-based discounts. But there's also a lot of the actual cost of this that is picked up by some of the state agencies as well.
$500 cost, or what you said, a $500 cost?
Yes, I believe that is right. That is for a year-long, so a 2-semester course.
What gives us an indication that students are already interested or will be
So students are required to complete an ILP through the state, and that is a platform that we use in the high school, and there is an interest. It is not a huge level of interest. Probably about 4 to 5 students at preliminary impact that would be interested in taking this. But that's 4 to 5 more students that are able to get industry certifications and CTE pathway experience than what we had before at really a nominal cost, because one of the best parts of this is that because it is a CTE program, our Perkins funds can be used to cover the cost of this. So it's not anything that would come from the general fund, and we get reimbursements based upon seat time in those courses, so it almost could become a self-sufficient platform.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the consent items as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, let's move on down to our business and action items for this evening. The first item up is actually a snow removal proposal from Great View Contracting. They give us some good and interesting numbers, but I think we have a little bit of a comment we want to make about that before we take it to a vote.
Yeah, I wanted to provide additional context, and actually, my recommendation would be to deny this request, just because this is the only bid that we received for snow removal services. You put out your RFP, which is your request for proposal from our facilities department to garner bids, and this is the only bid that we received. And this seems to me to be an astronomical cost to pay $4,000 for every time that it snows for our lot to be cleared. But through the process of how you have to operate under that umbrella for RFP, we can't solicit individual bids until one has been presented to the board and either approved or denied. So my recommendation would actually be to deny this bid just because of the costs associated with it. And then myself, Mr. Owens, and Mr. Sweet could start to strategize on an additional plan for getting a much more feasible, financially appropriate snowplow removal.
So moved.
Second?
All those opposed? Aye, opposed. All those, how do we do that? All those in favor?
All those,
Hold on, we want to reject it, or sorry, his recommendation, yeah.
you have to phrase it, and then we'll
I
know
do,
which way to vote.
and I got all backwards. So, we're gonna, okay, so all those in favor,
Of the proposal as it's written?
as is written. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Right, yeah, that's the weird part.
Yeah.
An aye for opposed, okay. We all agree we voted against it. Great,
Yes.
all four again. Shoo,
Unanimously, the board
denied.
down.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to say, with the speed of kind of learning opportunity, et cetera, that some of the students might be able to participate in some way.
Do you mean the search for a contract or for the removal of the snow?
The actual removal of the snow. But whoever gets a contract, would they be open to seeing how they could make use of students who might be interested in learning about that process as a potential career or side business opportunity?
We would certainly be open to that for sure. I think that could be something we look into.
Maybe if we put it in the, a line in the bid process, it might attract some people who hadn't thought about it.
And if not, I would recommend that Nathan begin to get his truck together and just go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't known to shovel snow, even though I come from Alabama.
I think so the biggest thing on this, just the context on this, it's the big parking lot. You can't handle it for a little gator. And so, even though the city owns it, we've had this conversation before, they will only go from one side of the football stadium to the other side of the football stadium, and they just stop. And then we've got to do the rest, get the rest of it done. Nuisance snows like we've had so far, we've kind of covered most of them with our little gator. The big parking lot, if we get like a big snow, I don't know how well that little gator's gonna be able to push 6 inches of snow with a little gator, you know, like.
It won't.
It won't, yeah. I mean, it's too heavy at some point, so.
All right, next item up is Power School onboarding proposal. And as this is presented, this will take our employee records onboarding software and combine it so that our onboarding platform is the same that is used for employment applications. It simply streamlines the process. The costs are presented in here. Looks like we begin to save money by doing this. Any questions about the proposal as it's being presented?
One of the ongoing cautions is that we are combining too many records together so that if something gets hacked or goes down, technically, the whole system's out and it's hard to cobble together something else because we too tightly coupled. One of the metaphors is like the way the railroad cars, they have this loose coupling, so as one car goes over the others, and they can adjust. So we need more of that type of system, even if it means maybe two independent systems that can be coordinated in some way, rather than combining and combining and combining.
See the objection. I think one of the unfortunate things here is, if I understand it from the background, district staff have to manually transfer the information from one system to another. So it's not like it's transitioned seamlessly from one to another. There is that cost of time and energy and effort to do that with that information, which also brings its own risk of error at that point. And both of the systems would have the same exposure to hacking risks, as I understand it.
Yeah, I believe they're actually both posted on Amazon Web Service. So likely if one was out in a given day, they both would be. And we've actually, so we've had frontline, we started with the frontline records management during COVID. It was kind of our way to stop driving down here and picking up stacks of paper and waiting for them to, cure in the corner and all of that. So I've been using frontline pretty much the whole time we've had it, and I can say we've had a lot of reliability and issues with it, and a lot of downtime. I know Christine works in it heavily too, and I think the two of us probably work in it more than anybody on the employee records side. And there are days where we just have to kind of write down where we were at and come back tomorrow. It's not been the most reliable software, just to be honest.
Hearing no.
So we replace frontline.
Just for this piece. So,
Just for this piece.
Yeah, so some background. Actually, when I applied here in, I guess 2016, we were using Power Schools for the application tracking then. And that was just the only piece we had. So when I got hired, I came out of the board office and I got this big pack of papers. And then I've been on the other side of that too, where we were scanning those things in and filing. And then that's the thing too, if the record starts on paper, even if you scan it in and digitize it, you have to also maintain it in its original form. So then we kind of had this mixed match of files throughout COVID, and having it all digital has been great. We just haven't got all of just this particular platform, reliability-wise, hasn't been wonderful. And I have talked to quite a few people that use Power Schools. The feedback seems to be that it's more user-friendly for the applicants, which is certainly that's a big piece for us. I don't think it's any simpler on our side, other than maybe it's gonna hopefully be a little more stable. But the experience for a new employee having to do all of their paperwork, because right now we're having someone make an account, put in an application, and then we, interview them, call them, say, hey, you've got the job. We say, hey, guess what? We need you to make another account that's totally separate of this and this other thing. And then we're gonna send you the paperwork. And so before they've even come onto campus the first time, other than their interview, they've got 2 totally separate accounts. And then once they are done with their paperwork, we're effectively looking at it as PDFs and then manually entering it all in several other places. So it's gonna be, this change would certainly have some efficiencies on our side, but another big part of it is really that new hire onboarding experience, because we've got consistent feedback the whole time we've had frontline, even outside of any kind of, you know, glitchiness or, you know, buggy things that it does, that it's just not, it's very user friendly. And I've actually met with Power School several times for different demos and things, and these rates are heavily negotiated too, because originally year 1 was gonna, more or less, the 6,700 is their annual that they agreed to match, because I told them that if they couldn't at least match what we were paying, that we weren't gonna go on to the next conversation. But then they came back with a, like an onboarding setup fee, and I told them again, you know, we can't add any cost right now. Like, hey, you know, we can talk again in a couple of years maybe. But basically what they offered to do, year 2 is only that setup fee. So more or less, our year 1 cost covers 2 years, and then we pay so the way that it actually works out, we do save a little bit of money just in year 2, and then the cost is pretty comparable moving forward.
Good negotiating, thank you.
We've been learning.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the contract with Power School for employee records?
I move we approve anything that's user friendly. I'll vote.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I believe we are at board member comments for the evening.
That's my due diligence already.
Well, I appreciate hearing from so many staff and the smiles and confidence that you're talking about what you did and what the others did. It was really reassuring. Thank you.
I'm grateful for a good report, and I hope y'all have a restful break. I know you're counting down the days. That's where I am.
I'm counting down the days as well. I think my only comment tonight, thinking about the MTSS reporting and the tiering and how we're gonna share that with people, it is one of the spaces, even though I spent a lot of years teaching, I didn't teach in the public school system, and it is such an incomprehensible system to some of us some days. If you would like someone to read those documents to know if they are accessible to the general public, I would love to be part of that process just to better understand what we're doing in our school. And if that tier 1 expectation is really what we want all our kids to have, I think we need to have that really in front of us as we go forward. So, thanks everybody. Have a great holiday break and see y'all in January.
Merry Christmas.
So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do that as much as is necessary.